Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Taves, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is located in Treaty 1 territory. That is, of course, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Aninilak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Brewstertown. We are gathered here today to celebrate the 2024 installment of the Rites of Spring, the National Poetry Month project of the Winnipeg International Writers Festival and the Winnipeg Free Press. Just a quick heads up for all of you reading here today. This microphone is movable up and down. It works best if you do this. But I will also be lurking behind here running the sound. So if there are any issues with microphone placement, you'll notice me dart out like a shadow to either side. It's always exciting to have an opportunity to celebrate poetry in any form, and this is a particularly excellent project. Selfishly, it's particularly exciting as I do run the poetry section here, so this is really just a clandestine attempt to get you all to buy poetry books. I'll let the editors introduce this year's installment in just a moment, but first I have the pleasure of introducing them both. Julian Day is a software developer and poet, and the author of the chapbooks Orbits, Model Press, and Late Summer Flowers, which is published by Anstruther Press. His work has appeared most recently in CD2 and the Antigonish Review. My nemesis, Ariel Gordon, is a Winnipeg Treaty 1 territory-based writer, editor, and enthusiast. Her fifth book, Sightseeing, Writing Nature and Climate Change Across the Prairies, written in collaboration with Saskatchewan poet Brenda Schmidt, was published by Adbay Press in fall 2023 and was recently shortlisted for a 2024 Saskatchewan Book Award. Please offer Ariel Gordon a reserved level of applause.
I don't think I'm going to be able to go to Regina for the Saskatchewan Book Awards, which are May 3rd, but if I did go, I would say, and if I won, which is a lot of ifs, I would be like, does that mean I'm a Saskatchewan writer now? To a room full of Saskatchewan writers. That's like throwing a bomb. You know, that rivalry with Saskatchewan, Manitoba rivalry, which they won because the Saskatchewan literary community historically had like ridiculous amounts of funding. Like, if you were a poet, you could actually make a living in Saskatchewan. You know, I don't know, you know, like I look like I earn a lot of money, but that's not the case here.
But they didn't make it to the Grey Cup.
No, they didn't make it to the Grey Cup. All right, well, thank you and welcome to the Rites of Spring. This is the 9th year that we've been doing this, which, yeah, thank you so much. There aren't that many daily newspapers that still have a book section. I think there's 2 right now, the Toronto Star and the Winnipeg Free Press. And I can tell you exactly how many newspapers run poetry every year, because it's a big 0. So yeah, so I'm really grateful that they let me do this. I'm really thankful to Winnipeg International Writers Festival for all their support. And I also want to point out, this weekend, the books section has poetry on the main page, written by Melanie Brannigan Fredrickson. So like, that's also like crazy. And there's 2 local reviews here, and there's more poetry on the other pages. Anyways, it's excellent, so you should pick up a copy and subscribe, even just digitally. And that's the last commercial I will do for the Free Press, I promise. But thank you to the features editor, Scott Gibbons. Thank you to Lisa Dahl, who does the layout every year. And this year, I started work at the Free Press as a copy editor after freelancing for them for 15 years. And so I was actually able to do all of the proofing myself on the computer. But in other years, I would literally be on the phone with Lisa and I'd be like, okay, the 3rd line in the 1st stanza, bump it over 4 dots. And she'd be like, then she'd send it to me. I'd be like, no, that was 3 dots. It needs 4. And then I'd be cursing that poet in particular because their poem would look like leaves on the page, which is great. Like, that's what poetry does. It uses the page like a canvas, but you know, when you're the person hitting the space bar 4 times and not 3, there might be a little bit of hatred. So every year we have a theme. This year's theme was Winnipeg 150. And you'll notice this year there's gonna be a bunch of sort of programming around the province of people that got funding to offer Winnipeg 150. We applied for that funding and didn't get it, but we were stuck with the theme. So, you know, it's very Winnipeg. But it was an interesting theme, so I'm glad we ran with it. 2024, of course, is the 150th anniversary of the Winnipeg's first city council meeting. So 1873 is when the city was founded. You can, if there's anti-colonial readings, you can decide for yourself when Winnipeg or Red River actually began, whatever, but that was the first city council meeting. And so we asked people to write to that idea, right? Like our shared and complicated past and our future. And this is not a political section, but I have to say, it's actually really nice to have like a mayor and a premier that don't seem to hate poor people, right? And so for the first time in a long time, I actually feel kind of hopeful, you know, that we'll actually arrive somewhere. Oh. All right, so I also want to thank Mike Deal, who's lurking in the back, for all the glorious portraits. Sometimes this creates fights among the poets because he doesn't photograph all the poets, only some of them. And the ones that don't get photographed get very kind of like, fine, no, you don't need my picture, that's okay. So it's only a time constraint. It's not, yeah, it's not on purpose. We don't hate you. All right, so we got a whole bunch of submissions. We have 12 poets here to share their work with you. Please feel free to open up your section now. You know, they tell you at the theater to do the mint now instead of later. So if you actually want to follow along, which you can, if anyone else needs a copy, put your hand up, and I have some in a bag here. Is it in no hands? Okay. So we're just going to start. We're going to introduce the poets. We're going to ask people to read things twice, just so that you can grasp it, right? Because some of them are very short. Yeah. So I am so happy with these poems and these poets, and I'm so proud to be here in front of you. It's like an okay day outside. If it's a really nice day outside, then I'm always like, oh wow, they're here. And it's a really nice day. It's okay days outside. So, you know, I have less enthusiasm for your attendance than I might otherwise. But yeah, so we're so proud of this. Thank you so much to Julian Day. Julian, do the hand wave. Yay. My co-editor. And he has a manuscript out in the world, circulating his first book of poems, sort of making its way from publisher to publisher. And I think we should give it a little lift. So can we have an extra round of applause for Julian's poems that are moving in the world? And I have now thoroughly embarrassed him. But yeah, all right. So our first poet is Jody Baltessen. We have two archivists today, two poet archivists, which means they're very concerned in which order the poems appear. So Jody is a Winnipeg poet, writer, archivist, retired. Her work explores the materiality and layered meanings of place, records, and the archive itself. Please welcome Jody Baltessen.
Thank you. Awesome, thank you. So I was gonna start by saying a bunch of thank yous, but Ariel did such a good job. I'm not gonna take up your time with that, but a huge thank you to everyone who was involved in this. It's just a really brilliant project. And so thanks to all of you for being here. So I thought I should give a bit of context before I read my kind of crazy poem. So I worked for some 30 years in Winnipeg archives, and 17 of those were in the City of Winnipeg archives. And so I spent a lot of time in the aisles and bays where the records are stored. They make a lot of noise. This poem is one in a series of poems that looks at records from the first year of the city, with the intent of nudging them out of their typical legal and bureaucratic space so that we might read them anew. The clerk in the poem's title is the city clerk. This particular one is Alexander McDougall Brown. And the clerk is one of the very first positions that was filled by the newly elected council in January of 1874. His appointment was in February. So the poem title is taken directly from the charter for the City of Winnipeg, which states that the clerk shall duly record in a book without note or comment all resolutions, decisions, other proceedings of council, all of which he shall so keep in his office or in the place appointed. So that was the beginning of the archives. And here is my poem. And the clerk shall duly record. Communications. William Ashdown, March 23, 1874. Requesting removal of a dead horse, which will soon be getting offensive. Deposited in the vicinity of the new Methodist Church in the North Ward. Before there was a church, blessed, on a muddy street. Bison, gopher, wolf, hare roamed there, followed their nature. A liturgy of ligament, skin, muscle, bone, wilded through the ravage of seasons, of sky and sky and sky, the moon in her phases waning over the final heave of body, all its elements in transit. Blowfly, flesh fly, bloat, rupture, marbled veins, phosphorus, and dry remains transformed into green unfolding. Seneca, snake root, stinging nettle, sage, hyssop, sweetgrass, bee balm, yarrow. Referred to Mr. Ashdown to find out who deposited the carcass on his ground where it lies, and to the chief of police to compel removal by owner. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to Ariel for having me on as co-editor on the project. I'm going to be briefer at the mic because I'm always deeply uncomfortable at them, so there we go. Our next reader is Joel Caples. Joel is a Treaty 1 writer from California, supported and inspired by his wife and their two talented teams. Please welcome Joel.
Thank you. It's very much an honor to be able to read before all of you and to just be included with such a great cohort of poets, and just thank you again to Ariel and to Julian for really selecting a collection of poems. It's like a tiny anthology that I think really speaks to the how hard it is sometimes to love this city, but the fact that we come back to doing so anyways. And that bit of hope, you know, that is carried through all of these poems, and it's just really great to know that with a city with a complicated history, there's still better things yet to come. So this is my poem, How La Fourche became Neustawea again. Two rivers slice this city in thirds or glue it together. It's hard to tell which is happening to us when we walk through the forks, together knowing that you were here first and welcomed me to enter a treaty in the works since before I arrived with my curiously high interest in trade, since before trade wasn't enough and the game became subsumption. It took a lot of guns to get the job done down south, but here a few empty promises were enough to prove I had something to learn about this utopia I dragged across the land like a plow through a harvest-ready field. So how do we navigate this current? We follow the river's lead and gather our muddy waters like a skirt to give courtesy and wade into the convergence of history and the continent, where treaties weaved in honor will be watertight again when I learn to start saying miigwech, at least. I guess you wanted me to read it twice. I'll try and switch it up and give you another version of it with some different emphases if I can. But here we go. How La Fourche became Neustawea again. Actually, maybe I should say something. I was thinking about the word Neustawea. I don't know if everybody is familiar with this. It was something I just came across recently, and the trail has been renamed to the Neustawea Trail, and I understand that it's a word that means 3 points. And it's interesting. It's always been interesting to me that the forks, the naming of the forks indicates a splitting, but it's actually a convergence. And I wanted to bring back that word that we've lost and is being refound, and be a reminder that, yeah, it's a place of coming together.
What does miigwech mean?
Miigwech means thank you. Yes. And I believe that is in Ojibwe, but I am not an expert in the languages, and I just wanted to be able to bring that out from my place in the conversation. So here we go. How La Fourche became Neustawea again. Two rivers slice this city in thirds or glue it together. It's hard to tell which is happening to us when we walk through the forks, together knowing you were here first and welcomed me to enter a treaty in the works since before I arrived, with my curiously high interest in trade, since before trade wasn't enough and the game became subsumption. It took a lot of guns to get the job done down south, but here a few empty promises were enough to prove I had something to learn about this utopia I dragged across the land like a plow across a harvest-ready field. So how do we navigate this current? We follow. The rivers lead and gather. Our muddy waters like a skirt to give courtesy and wade into the convergence of history and the continent, where treaties weaved in honor will be watertight again. When I learn to start saying miigwech, at least.
Thank you so much, Joel. That was Joel's very first reading.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't think you can tell, so an extra round of applause. All right, so our next reader is Conni Cartlidge, and this is Conni's second appearance in Rites of Spring. And raise your hand if you are related to Conni in some way, if you're a part of her entourage. See, that's not a bad entourage. Yeah. All right, so Conni Cartlidge, she, her, is a retired early childhood art educator and college instructor. Please welcome Conni Cartlidge.
Thank you. Is there any lurkers coming? Thanks, McNally Robinson, for having lurkers. So thank you so much for. I don't know. He's lurking, I don't know. So So thank you so much for having me. To Ariel and Julian, thanks for all the work you've put into this project. To the Winnipeg Free Press for making space for poetry. To the Winnipeg International Writers Festival for initiating this. And personally, I'd like to thank the Manitoba Arts Council, my writing mentors and friends, some of them are here, and my open-minded family for always encouraging me. And I'm so happy some of them are here today. I didn't want to write about this topic, this Winnipeg 150, and yes, this is political. Knowing people have lived here for much longer than 150 years. And I didn't want to write about this topic because I'm not from Winnipeg. And I didn't want to write about this topic because I thought I had nothing to say. But as I reminisced about my Selkirk home and the draw that the big city held for me, I started to remember pieces of my own history in the 60s and 70s and my complicated relationship with Winnipeg. So my poem is called I Don't Want to Write About Winnipeg. I don't want to write about Winnipeg. The defunct Selkirk Winnipeg bus ran every hour, twice during rush hour, carried us giddy girls finally allowed to travel alone. Portage Avenue between Eaton's and the Bay. Me wishing I was cuter, wishing I was older, wishing I had more money. The sound of a woman's bellows as she tumbled down the up escalator at a crowded downtown department store. Brutalist concert hall bus stop bench that held me frozen during a forced first kiss. An old arena where I set myself on fire and ruined my black midi coat with a careless flick of my Rothmans. The left bank disco filled with desperate, sweaty polyester hustlers. My Spence Street duplex with its peeping Tom and upstairs abuser. The greasy woman on the Wolseley bus who cursed at me, spit on my hair, laughed as I fled with my first fiance and our brand new marriage license. Cockroaches in the 4th floor Westminster walk-up, where the hippies wanted all creatures to live free.
Okay, up next is Kristian Enright. Kristian is a Winnipeg-based writer, educator, and tutor who has a forthcoming book with Turnstone Press, Postmodern Weather Report. Please welcome Kristian. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. So glad to see everybody here in the name of poetry. Ariel's already looking at me weirdly. I'd like to thank you for being the most consistent heckler in my entire life, that every time I'm about to fail at something, I hear her voice on the prairie winds. It's very instilling. Thank you. So Ariel actually made an offer that I couldn't refuse. And actually, this poem was originally twice as long as it is right now. And she sort of helped. Sorry, John. John and I also have another strange relationship sometimes, it seems. So this was actually about 30 lines, and Ariel was kind enough to contact me and told me to edit the damn thing. So I did that, and I really would like to thank you, because you helped me find the poem in kind of the mess. So this is called One Simulacra Rome for Trains, imagined as produced by the same think tank that came up with the idea of one great city. In the history of cities, ours is incredibly brief, as if the ephemeral city, an exiled suburbia as island, a good place to raise cherubim to the sky's fat air. not to let them fall into generic poverty. The tragedy watches Clockwork Orange like in our downtown, our sky dystopian, our city out of fashion tries to beautify practicality, a trained city which could, which will, tough and gritty as the moon, sun's wrath shines on you, as you will see below. Close readings are needed. In a moment of panic, a camera sees the snowflakes, census for children's ideas, hieroglyphs as epitaphs upon hydrographs, hidden like the question. Are we a Chicago of the North lost to those who stayed? What affected tones in retail out of fades echo merely hollow? In a potentially centralized pothole, archaeology for kids, a place landlocked. Middle-sized city in a middle, see, Goldilocks, dug as capitalism, waned like Yukon calls for gold rushes in vain. Midpoint fairy tales, happily ever after upon times circular, on track, we hope for a Tundra-esque miracle. Thank you.
I wanted to heckle so bad during that poem. If you ever want to heckle a poet, one of the things you can say is, "You call that poetry?" Or "Go home." I'm just saying. Oh, Conni, I still haven't sent you the check for your poem. Yeah. Okay. So the next poet, it's so Winnipeg because I worked with Mary Horodyski's sister, Susan Horodyska, who very sadly died from breast cancer. I don't even know how many. She died, but it wasn't. Oh, but she died. And I'm actually wearing a necklace of Susan's that I bought from her when she was having this moment of purge. She had decided she wanted to be a visual artist and she moved into a studio and she was like, you know, really going for it. Anyways, and she was lovely and I'm wearing her necklace. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. Okay, nobody look at me or Mary. Okay. Mary is another archivist on our list of poet archivists. She's also a researcher and a writer living in Winnipeg/Treaty 1 territory. And Mary, after a long hiatus, is writing poems again, and I'm so glad because I'm a poetry cult recruiter and I always want people to come back to poetry. You can leave poetry, but you can come back too. So please welcome Mary Horodyski and her return to poetry. Woo!
Thank you. I don't have a preamble and I can't ad lib because I told Ariel that if I ad lib, I have to write it all down first. And she said, that's not ad libbing. So I just want to say, I agree with all the thanks that everyone said, and I add my own to everyone who made this happen. So my poem has lots of pauses in it, but you'll know when it's over. So my poem is called April, St. Boniface Hospital. A kumquat falls from the gift basket and rolls across the floor. My brother slaps it with the side of his boot and it spins under the next bed. Welcome to the 7th floor, the bowel floor, where inside is out and entrails squeeze their murky contents through clear plastic tubes and collect in bags that clap against the IV stands when the patients creep along the hall. Except my mother is not moving. The lady behind the curtain in the next bed is putrefying, and a noxious smell clings to every molecule of air. My brother puts his paper coffee cup tight to his face and breathes through his Tim Horton gas mask. I hold my scarf to my nose and smell my stale perfume. Roll up the rim and win. I get, please play again, please pay again, please pray again. I learned the hard way the front doors of the hospitals lock at midnight. I stand in the wet dark and wave uselessly to my brother up above. Me, here below, in the dank spring air of Winnipeg. Spring, when all the old people tumble into beds of dirt or lift up and waft like dandelion seeds, and everywhere, all the worms everywhere, all the worms everywhere dance.
Louella Lester's writing appears in many journals and anthologies and is included in Best Microfiction 2024. Glass Bricks from FA Press is her first book. Please welcome Louella Lester.
Oh, I was excited thinking I would handle it. And I want to say, you're great, Ariel. I'll take Connie's $75 check. And then I'll take my friends for coffee. Am I reading this twice? Okay, so I won't say anything about it. I'll say it in between. Okay, so it's called Temperatures Rising. Unusual. Spring heat bleeds into the apartment, sticks like my sweaty thighs well into the night. Forever, the window is open and willing to accept any type of air. Finally, a whisk of breeze licks my shoulder and I drift off. Until a chatty pair sifting the recycle bins below awakes me. Honks of Canada geese landing on the roof next door. And a feather of wind brushes my feet. Okay, so my explanation, I was thinking about the topic and I thought, I was thinking about how Winnipeg has changed and just in my lifetime, how it feels so much more hot than it did in the past. And the building I live in was built in 1967, which is not that long before 73. And I was thinking, I wonder what it was like in this building if it was so hot when back then. And I'm on the west side and there's a sort of concrete courtyard that holds the heat and everything. And last summer is what I was thinking about, last spring when it was super hot. It's kind of cooler right now, but so that's what this was about. So I'll read it a second time. Temperatures rising. Unusual. Spring heat bleeds into the apartment. Sticks like my sweaty thighs well into the night. Forever, the window is open and willing to accept any type of air. Finally, a whisk of breeze licks my shoulder and I drift off. Until a chatty pair sifting the recycle bins below wakes me. Honks of Canada geese landing on the roof next door. And a feather of wind brushes my feet. Thanks.
A note to any of the poets that are coming after this, no more thank yous. We've had more than enough thank yous now. We'll just know that you're feeling those thanks in your little poet hearts. We are about halfway, and you know how in baseball, this is a sportsy reference, in baseball there's a 7th inning stretch. Well, we're gonna do the poetry version. So if you feel like it, I will bully you and give you the stink eye if you don't. If you feel like, I want everyone to rise to their feet, and we are gonna do my favorite thing in the world, which is where I'm going to get you to chant something just in time for National Poetry Month. All right, does anybody know what I'm gonna say? Okay, so yeah, poetry forever. So you're gonna put your fist up like this, we'll pretend we're at a protest, and you're gonna say poetry forever, as loud or as quiet as you want. And I'm gonna take a picture because it makes me laugh. All right, 1, 2, 3. Poetry forever, yay! Okay, that's it. So if you wanna do some additional arm swings, you can, but that's the 7th inning stretch. I should say that we were actually really lucky to get some funding This is the last thank you that is permitted. We were actually really lucky to get some funding from the Assiniboine Credit Union. And then now we're able to pay the poets. Woohoo! All artists should be paid for their time and their effort. Yeah. Okay, so next is K. Marie Neufeld, who is a Winnipeg poet and editor, and her work has appeared in Prairie Books Now, Vallum, and Geez. Please welcome K. Marie Neufeld.
So this poem is about my neighborhood of Elmwood, which is across the Disraeli Bridge and is very small and low profile. And a couple of years ago, I conducted a project where I went on a number of walks and collected graffiti and images and all sorts of things and wrote found poems just to explore the voice of my neighborhood. So this one is called Graffiti Confessions. Lost all hope, send love into the ether. Love the earth, love yourself before others can. Megan loves Dylan and Ava. Benji hearts Leah. I still love you, and I can hear the church bells. Take two. Graffiti Confessions. Lost all hope, send love into the ether. Love the earth, love yourself before others can. Megan loves Dylan and Ava. Benji hearts Leah. I still love you, and I can hear the church bells. Thank you.
Next up, and I apologize because I've got terrible French, is Laurent Poliquin. Laurent is, oh, I have to read it in French.
Do you want me
Oh,
to
no.
do it?
Yes, please.
Laurent Poliquin est un poète, artiste contemporain et éducateur franco-manitobain. Parmi ses publications récentes, on mentionnera le guide ultime pour réussir sa recherche d'emploi au Canada, Primo Mobile 2024. See? Thank you.
Okay, I'll be cheating because I cannot say thank you, but I can say merci. And I'm thinking, it might be the first time that the Free Press published a poem in French. Not even? No.
We've done it a couple of times.
Here's the good news. Just before coming today, I kind of translated the poem, so I'll try it first, obviously the original version, and then the translation. Dans les hauteurs du temps, le vent ivre joue de sa flûte entre les gratte-ciels. Ses échos tumultueux célèbrent une harmonie de hasard. Des murmures gelés se rassemblent sur les rives d'une rivière. Ils tissent la trame de destins à venir. Ici, les mots dansent tels papillons égarés, où chaque rue, chaque place, chaque recoin cache le fragment d'un vaste rêve rebelle. Libre et brave, des esprits ont sculpté des audaces, gravé d'innombrables promesses, comme autant de sentiers incertains, de ces reflets brillants, de yeux qui reviennent vers nous. Ô Winnipeg de joies extravagantes, ô doux éclats de rire immortels, tes boulevards bouleversent les festins de vie, où tout peut renaître, léger, comme des alizés.
find you very courageous because I was listening to obviously other poets and it's a little rough sometimes, you know, every line there's like, I don't understand this word and this word, I'm not sure. So my reading is also sometimes thinking, okay, maybe the pronunciation will be a little difficult. In the ides of time, the drunken wind plays its flute between the skyscraper. Its tumultuous echoes celebrate an harmony of chants. Frozen murmurs gather on the riverbank, weaving the fabric of destinies to come. Here words dance like lost butterflies. Everywhere, every street, every square, every corner hides a fragment of a vast cerebral dream. Free and brave, spirits have sculpted audacities, engraved countless promises, like so many uncertain paths, brilliant reflection of eyes that returns to us. Oh, Winnipeg of extravagant joy, oh, sweet burst of immortal laughter. Your boulevards turn life's feast upside down, where all can be reborn, light, like trade winds.
Tamar Rubin's first poetry collection, Tablet Fragments, was nominated for several awards, including the Gerald Knapp Memorial Award and the McNally Robinson Book of the Year. Please welcome Tamar Rubin.
No thanks to everyone here. So this is about getting a water bill and realizing that you have a leak. Slow leak. Before you realize the toll of the water bill on your mental health, before you enter a series of 5 meaningless numbers into an online account, before milk, love, air continue to squeeze forward in pipes, and every second a fraction spills out somewhere. The source of city water, Shoal Lake, turns to wet drywall, feeds melancholy through indoor mold. A computer calculating a fair exchange for this. You cannot count, but you imagine droplets emptying a pool of inner tubes, the way that filling an unplanned, buried path from your bathtub to the reservoir leaves you searching behind insulation, dampness for the errant nail or hard line on the tank that says, stop here.
All right. Our next poet is Kerry Ryan. Kerry and I, Kerry was reluctant to submit to this for many years because we've known each other for 30 years. We were in our first creative writing programs together. And she blames me for the fact that she's still writing. But she is a great writer. And I'm so pleased to be able to include her work for the second time in Rites of Spring. And this is a classic Winnipeg poem, and I was so glad to have it. It fit the theme so well. Kerry Ryan's 3 poetry collections, including Diagnosing Minor Illness in Children, for sale here on the table, should you want to buy it after the event, which came out with Frontenac House in 2023, and she was shortlisted for the 2022 CBC Poetry Prize. Please welcome Kerry Ryan.
Feels rude not to say thank you to anyone, so just know that I'm thinking my thanks. And I just want to say how lovely it is to hear this little rustle of newspapers just all throughout, and to, you know, spread out your newspaper and like kind of infringe on the person next to you. Remember when we used to do that, like on the bus? It's just bringing back all kinds of memories. I'm gonna read this poem one time, and as I read it, you can think about who in your neighborhood plays this role. Ode to the neighbor who maintains the street drain. Every April he hatches out of winter with his long-handled chipper and gets down to business. Thaw is his busy season, double shifts, working holidays, smashing ice for greater digestibility, feeding meltwater to the sewer's lip. Day after day he's out there, shoes unequal to the task, windbreaker unzipped to free the steam of his work. The rest of us cruise through, resigned to the swamp between my house and his, deeper every year. Every block has one, fastidious, driven, chipping away for all of us. I only recognize him from a distance.
Next up is Kate Sjoberg. Kate lives in Winnipeg, leading meditation groups, teaching politics, and organizing at the University of Winnipeg and working on Main Street Project. Please welcome Kate.
Hi, everybody. Last August, I adopted a dog, like mistakenly adopted a dog, who has the kind of personality that makes me feel like I'm in a practical joke, like all the time. Not a practical joke, but a positive one. I used to run an organization called The Wrench, which is a nonprofit that builds bikes with parts taken from the landfill and then distributes them. And Kerry Ryan was my project officer when I worked at The Wrench. So this is a nice tie-in, and it has to do with what I wrote. So thanks for having me. About last night, men talked to me about my work. No, I don't care about your stolen bike. And no, your stolen bike is not a deterrent to the active transportation movement. And no, I don't care about your stolen bike. And no, I don't care about the insurance. And no, I don't care about locks. And no, I don't care about where you left it. And no, it wasn't more or less safe than anywhere else. And no, I will not serve the Ukrainian refugee family you are helping before other refugees or Indigenous kids made strangers to their own homelands. And no, I don't care about your stolen bike. And the only cyclists and potential cyclists you care about are white, and you will tell me again and again and again about your stolen bike. And I will tell you there are more than enough bikes in Winnipeg for every person to have more than one bike. And you will tell me again and again and again about your stolen bike and want arrests and want deterrence, and I will give you a bike. I will offer you a bike. And you will tell me again and again and again about your stolen bike. And I will tell you about poverty, and you will tell me about your stolen bike, the one that was stolen before you bought another one. And no, I don't care about your stolen bike.
Okay, aren't these poets excellent? Kate, was that your first poetry reading?
Yeah.
First poetry reading. All right. The next poet is Hanako Teranishi, and she will pronounce it correctly when she gets up here. They, them is a queer Yonsei mixed Japanese Canadian, and I'm so pleased to have this work in this year. Please welcome her.
Got it. Thank you. I'm also gonna read it twice because it's a bit short. So like before, I'll read it first once, and then I'll have some words. Also feels weird not thanking anyone, but I feel it in my heart. The title is Flat Jep. My hands slip between my thighs, over my gradual hills, across the valley between mounds, marked by a convergent stream where prairie soils wounds the harvest bloom, is rooted in decay, years of abuse. I yearn to spade my mounds, cutting, chopping,
tearing of the roots, the rot, desolate soil, not even potatoes will grow. Crows circle crops, ravens call kin to feast, winter's kiss smothers my tumbling river, a crimson moon dawns, Kisetsu wa yoi desho. Thank you. The translation for that means the season will be good. For people who don't know, the title Flat Jap includes original slip for Japanese Canadians. I chose that title specifically because it's a series of poems, it's a series of collections that I've named after racist nicknames I was given in high school. And I took them and I reimagined them. And this one was specifically because I didn't look like a girl because of my body, which made me very upset at the time, but for now it's something that I embraced and I love about myself. And so while the poem seems very dark and desolate, the end of the poem is hopeful because the season will be good and I'm happy with my body. And so I wanted this poem to be about my place in Winnipeg as someone who's queer and came from a family who was interned in 1942. And finding home, and finding belonging in my body and space and the people that I share it with. So thank you. I'll read it one more time. Flat Jap. My hands slip between my thighs, over my gradual hills, across the valley between mounds, marked by a converging stream, running down my core where prairie soil's wombs, the harvest's bloom, is rotted in decay, years of abuse. I yearn to spade my mounds, cutting, chopping, tearing of the roots, the rot, desolate soil, not even potatoes will grow. Crows circle crops, ravens call kin to feast, winter's kiss smothers my tumbling river, a crimson moon dawns, Kisetsu wa yoi desho.
All right, well, that is everything. That is all of our poets. Thank you so much. I know a lot of you are here to support your poet. And some of you are here just to come every year, and I always appreciate that. Next year will be 10. The 10th year, we will do approximately the same thing, but we will pretend is bigger and better. Because you have to pretend that you are progressing always. But anyways, thank you so much to the poets. I don't mind thanking them again. If you want, rustle your paper or applaud. Yay! We have a few books here. There are more books over there, just on the other side of the dinosaur on top of the shelves. It was the Canadian Independent Bookstore Association Day yesterday. And it's not the day, but you could still stay and buy lots of books and go to the restaurant. And thank you to McNally's and John. This is your cue, John. Thank you to the festival, thank you to the paper, thank you to the Credit Union. And now you are released.